Hi everybody, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. For a few weeks now, for months now, we've been reading through the Gospel according to Spiritism together. And last week we finished off the introduction, and while it may seem like, wow, we only finished the introduction, it was a 60-page introduction, so there's reason why it took so long. But even though it took so long, it's very important that we look over the introduction because it gives us a lot of background information that helps us to better understand what's coming in the rest of the book. And last week we finished talking about the teachings of Socrates, and we know that Socrates was way before the time of Jesus or Spiritism. Yet he had these basic principles that had the same basis of Spiritism and of Jesus' teachings. So we talked about how Socrates was one of those people who came to kind of like pave the road so that Jesus can come and teach more effectively. So not that all the ideas were exactly the same, but we can see in the ideas of Socrates that there are traces of Jesus' teachings and Spiritism. And this was crucial because if someone comes with a new idea that you've never heard before, you're immediately going to reject it. But when it's an idea that you've already semi-heard before, and now they're just clarifying it, then you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense because it's relating to something that you know. So having Socrates coming and kind of putting that seed of something that people already know helped immensely for people to accept Jesus' teachings and hear them out. And we know that many did not accept Jesus' teachings, but for the ones that did, it helped them to understand it because they could relate to things that they already knew about. So now finally we're moving on to chapter 1 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And the chapter is called, I have not come to destroy the law. So, and the first section that we're going to be talking about is the 3 revelations: Moses, Christ, and Spiritism. And if we just think about that title a little bit and we think about that, those 3 things that they just said, the 3 revelations, I have not come to destroy the law. Meaning that when Moses and Christ and Spiritism come, it's not to ruin the laws that are in place, right? Because many people in authority felt threatened by Moses and Christ because they thought, oh, what is this crazy idea that you're coming here with and like trying to take over, you're trying to rule over me, you're trying to say what I'm saying is not right. And even with Spiritism, people might think, oh, why are you trying to make something different, go against what everyone else believes? So they're saying, no, it's not to come destroy the law, right? But if there's laws that are incorrect, try and help them to understand, or just to revise or help or like support the laws. If there's a law that's you have to something about doing good, then they didn't come to destroy the law, just to help the law be enforced. So that's an important concept that we're going to see more about. So before the sections start, there's and in this book, kind of like the paragraphs or entities that they're talking about are numbered. So this is number 1 of chapter 1. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, that until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, nor the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law, until everything is fulfilled. Matthew 5:17 and 18. And as we talked about before, the way that this book is working is that it's getting pieces of the Bible, right? The common Christian Bible. And again, not changing them, not destroying these laws, but just explaining them into terms that we can better understand, or explaining how Spiritism comes into play in those teachings that are in the Bible. So right here, there's this little section, there's that little paragraph, and it was written by Matthew in chapter 5, section 17, 18. Or like kind of the same way that they're numbering it here. That's not really kind of sections, but just this paragraph's 1, and then the next 3 paragraphs are part of a section, so that's number 2. So the numbering's kind of weird, and it's not like each paragraph or each page or something like that, but it's just to better organize so that you can find these places easier. And we know that Jesus did not write down any of his own teachings, right? He spoke it, and his disciples and other key people wrote those things down. So when it says Matthew, it's not that Matthew said that, but that's Matthew writing what Jesus said. So now on to part 1 of the 3 revelations, which is Moses. There are 2 distinct parts to the Mosaic law: the law of God as promulgated on Mount Sinai, and the civil or disciplinary law decreed by Moses. The first is invariable, the other, being appropriate to the customs and the characters of the people, modifies itself with time. So here what they're saying is that, so there's 2 parts of Moses' laws, right, his revelations. The first is the law of God, that there's the story that he was on a mountain and received these, right, these laws of God. And the others are his, like, civil and disciplinary laws that he kind of adjusted to the people of the time. The law of God is formulated on the following 10 commandments. So this is part of the law of God that was given to him, right? That he got on the top of Mount Sinai. 1. I am the Lord, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. And then there's a footnote which says, Alan Kardec thought fit to quote only the first part of verse 5. We would therefore call attention to the great significance of this unquoted section, which states that the sins of the fathers will be visited upon the 3rd and 4th generations, according to their original translations, and not the 1st and 2nd generation, as stated in some of the recent translations. So they're just clearing up a kind of misconception that has come through different translations. So, which is good for us, because since we're just reading this book, we don't need to worry about what the other translation said if they were incorrect. The 2nd commandment, you shall not misuse the name of Lord your God. 3. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 4. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. 5. You shall not commit murder. 6. You shall not commit adultery. 7. You shall not steal. 8. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. 9. You shall not convey your neighbor's wife. 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house or his manservant or maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Then it continues. This law is for all time and all countries, and because of this, it has a divine character. All other laws were decreed by Moses, who found it necessary to restrain his people through fear due to their turbulation and undisciplined nature, and also to combat the abuses and prejudices acquired by them during the period of slavery in Egypt. To give authority to his laws, he had to give them divine origin, as did other legislators of primitive people. The authority of man needed to base itself on the authority of God. But only the idea of a terrible God could impress ignorant people in whom the sentiment of true justice and morality were very little developed. It is evident that he who included among his commandments, "You shall not commit murder or cause damage to your neighbor," could not then contradict himself by making extermination a duty. So here, so we read these 10 commandments that most people are familiar with, regardless of not growing up in that, in a Catholic doctrine, right? In Spiritism, we are mostly familiar with these, but sometimes we're not, so it's good to go over them again. And realize that even if this is, like, seen as, like, Catholic doctrine, it's the Christian doctrine, right? This is what Jesus and Moses were teaching us, which Spiritism still looks at, and we just kind of look for that Spiritism point in that. And they're also saying that, of course, these laws, these rules, kind of go to the people at the time, but they still apply to us, right? But you shall not commit murder. Today, everyone kind of knows that murder is not good, right? That's not right. Still, some people do it, but everyone is kind of understanding that that's not correct. But in that time, it was much harsher, and people were much less developed, so it wasn't that crazy for people to commit murder. So that's why those rules kind of come up in that way, because it was very big to the people at that time, which is still relevant for us today, right? You still shouldn't commit murder, but that's more understandable because we're more developed. Before, it was really not that understandable. And any other laws that we hear from Moses were himself that decreed them, right? He created those laws, but it was because, again, these people were very undeveloped, so they needed, like, extra laws. And he might have said, oh yeah, this is what God wants, and God does want us to follow good laws and do the right thing, but it was more to guide those people who were undeveloped and coming out of slavery and really didn't know how to have that love and charity and justice. So now we go on to the second revelation, Christ. Jesus did not come to destroy the law, that is to say, God's law. He came to fulfill and develop it, to show its real meaning and to adapt it to the degree of man's advancement at the time. That is why we find within the law the principle of our duty to God and our fellow men to be on the basis of his doctrine. Regarding the laws devised by Moses, we find that he, on the contrary, modified them profoundly, both in form and substance. While constantly combating the abuse of exterior practice and false interpretation, he was unable to make the people go through a more radical reform than that of reducing the law to the order. Love God above all things, and your neighbor as yourself. Adding, this is all the law and the prophets. So, again, Jesus didn't come to destroy these laws that Moses set up, but he came to reinforce them, right? Because, again, like we were saying, people were getting a little more advanced. So they didn't need these very simple rules. So he came to develop them some more. But of course, these 10 commandments still remain in Jesus' teachings, right? And one thing that Jesus brings us is love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. And with that, we see that in the commandments. It's just brought in a simpler way because people don't need it elaborately explained to love your neighbor as yourself. And people can understand that more. It's still hard to practice, right? The people were still not practicing. Even today, we don't practice that all the time. But it was a lot easier to understand. And even if they weren't practicing, they could understand that concept. So Jesus didn't come to destroy the laws of Moses, but just came to develop them, right? And explain them further because people were advancing and they needed new laws to guide them. By the words, heaven and earth will not pass till everything be fulfilled, even to the last jot. Jesus wished to say it was necessary for God's laws to be completely in complement and practiced all over the earth in all its pureness, with all its amplifications and consequences. In effect, what use would it have to be promulgated the law if it were only to benefit one nation or only a few people? Mankind, being sons and daughters of God, is without distinction, and so subject to the same solicitude. So they're saying, when Jesus said, heaven and earth will not pass till everything be fulfilled, even to the last jolt, what he meant was that these teachings are not for one group of people, not for a few people, not for one nation, for everyone, right? So everyone needs to be on the same page for heaven and earth to like pass, right? To become good, to overcome things. So it was kind of saying that this isn't a seclusive group that's going to know this, right? This is supposed to spread to everyone, these teachings of love God above yourself and your neighbor as your, and love God above all and your neighbor as yourself. But the role of Jesus was not simple, that of a moralist legislator, merely offering his word as exclusive authority. It fell to him to complete the prophecies which had announced his advent by means of the exceptional nature of his spirit and his divine mission. Jesus came to teach mankind that true life is not the one lived here on earth, but rather the life lived in heaven. He came to show the pathway to his kingdom, how to be reconciled with God, and to present these facts as part of things to come, which would enable mankind to fulfill its destiny. However, he did not explain everything, but limited himself to offering only the initial part of the truth on many subjects, saying that man as yet could not understand the whole truth. But he talked about all things in implied terms. In order for people to be able to understand the hidden meaning of his words, it was necessary for new ideas and knowledge to mature, thus bringing the indispensable key, as these things could not appear before the human spirit had achieved a certain degree of maturity. Science still had to play an important role in the emergence and development of these ideas. Therefore, it was necessary to give time for science to progress. So, they're saying that Jesus' role was extremely important, and it wasn't just someone that just came to say, okay, these are some new laws that everyone should follow, and that's it. He wasn't to have executive authority, right? But he wanted to complete the prophecies. He wanted to teach mankind that, right, it's not about life on earth, but life in heaven, or as we now refer to it, like as the spirit world. So it's not about this earthly life, but after that, right? And, or in our case, now that we know, before that too, right? The spirit world is what they were focusing on. But he couldn't teach us everything, because people at that time, and even people now, aren't that advanced to understand all these teachings. So he had to explain bits and pieces, like he had to explain he gave a little introduction on the topic, and he needed to wait. He planted the seed, but we need to develop further as a society, as individuals, to be able to understand these things. Because if you're 2 years old and someone comes up to you with organic chemistry, you're not going to be able to understand it. So he planted the seed, right, of a little chemical reaction that a 2-year-old can understand, and then you have to wait for that child to evolve, right, to grow up, to be able to understand organic chemistry. And even sometimes when they grow up, they still don't know. So that's kind of the same thing. So we're very underdeveloped, and so Jesus needed to explain in simple terms that we would understand and we would be able to work with a little bit. And still, even some people didn't understand, and some people don't understand today, and we still aren't at that level of understanding all of his teachings today. And even we see that with Spiritism, right? The spirits say, oh, that you're not going to understand right now because you're not that evolved. So while some ideas may seem simple, might seem like it's like a little story or something like that, it was the way that Jesus used it for everyone to understand, at that time, to understand what he was saying, right? Little stories and allegories instead of going into a long, complicated thing. Because like it says, we needed time to progress. We needed time for science and our society to progress. And now, the last part of the three revelations is Spiritism. Spiritism is the new science that has come to reveal to mankind, by means of irrefutable proofs, the existence and nature of the spiritual world, and its relationship with the physical world. It appears not as something supernatural, but on the contrary, as one of the living and instinctively active forces of nature. as the source of an immense number of phenomena, which still today are not fully understood, and because of this, they are relegated to the world of fantasy and miracles. Christ alludes to the situation on several occasions, and it is the reason why much of what he said remains unintelligible or has been wrongly interpreted. Spiritism offers the key by which all can be easily explained. So again, just like Jesus came to further develop Moses' ideas, Spiritism came to further develop Jesus' teachings, because Jesus, like we said, gave us little introductions, and not that we're that much more involved, but we're a little more involved, that we can get a little more information, a little more insight, and with some proof, right? Because people today don't really believe things unless there's proof, so that's why Spiritism brings irrefutable proof of these things to further develop what Jesus brought to us. The law of the Old Testament was personified in Moses, and that of the New Testament in Christ. Spiritism is then the third revelation of God's laws. But no one personifies it, because it represents teachings given not by man, but by the spirits who are the voices of heaven to all parts of the world through the cooperation of innumerable intermediaries. In a manner of speaking, it is the collective work formed by all the spirits who bring enlightenment to all mankind by offering the means of understanding their world and the destiny that awaits each individual on their return to the spirit world. So they're saying, like, the Old Testament people relate back to Jesus, to Moses, and the New Testament people relate back to Jesus. But Spiritism doesn't have a direct thing that like it's related to, right? But it's related to all the spirits that are bringing the enlightenment, right? So there's not one person, but all the spirits that are bringing us enlightenment that are connected to this third revelation. Just as Christ said, I am not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. So Spiritism says, we have not come to destroy the Christian law, but to carry it out. It teaches nothing contrary to what is taught by Christ. Rather, it develops it. It explains it in a manner that can be understood by all, and completes that which has previously been known only in its allegorical form. Spiritism has come at the predicted time to fulfill what Christ announced, and to prepare for the achievement of future things. It is then the work of Christ who, as he also announced, presided over the regeneration which is now taking place, and which will prepare the reign of the kingdom of God here on earth. So you're saying that Spiritism is following those things, that when Jesus said, I have not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, Spiritism said, we have not come to destroy the law, the Christian law, right, Jesus' laws, but to carry it out, to further explain it, to develop it more, just the same way Jesus was doing with Moses' laws. So nothing in Spiritism goes against Jesus' teachings, right? And only supplements it, adds to it, explains it further. But nothing in Spiritism is going against Jesus' laws. And maybe it goes against someone's interpretation of Jesus' law, but what Jesus actually said, nothing is contradicting. So that's where we'll leave off today, and next week we'll continue with the alliance between science and religion. Before we leave off today, I'd like to read a message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, April 30th. Providing the flame. Any committee is only as good as the most knowledgeable, determined, and vigorous person on it. There must be someone who provides the flame. Every gathering needs at least one person to be the spark to get things going. Whether we're at a party, the office, or a neighborhood meeting, we need someone to focus and energize the group. A single negative person can also put out that spark if we stand by and let it happen. Instead of responding to negativity with negativity, though, we can choose to help ignite the group once again. I can be the person who provides the flame if I set my mind to it. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me at creditgradedforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.